Congratulations, by now you have defeated Embryo and are on to the second phase of the game, Hive. Well, this is kind of a cool moment because we get to introduce the first unlockable character in World 2, and not everyone's going to play them, but I think a lot of people are going to play Starch. We really tried to pick a fun character for the first unlock to encourage people to try and branch out, and I think it works pretty well.
Yeah, I think she's the micro missiles are just a really fun and visually spectacular weapon, and the character's a fan favorite as well. So a lot of people just react really well to Starch in general. They get the humor.
I love the music in World 2 as well. It's so different from the first world. It just I hope it surprises people, and that's kind of across the entire campaign. I generally hope the game surprises people, but especially here.
I tried to make it so that as the level progressed, like the music really picks up in tempo, and also, I don't know, it's like from a mood point of view, the music initially has a real sort of happy tone to it, which not all of the music in the game is like that, but it just makes for a nice contrast.
I think it's interesting as well that across the campaign the levels get longer and the complexity of the music kind of increases to match because each track needs to fill more space, so you get the first taste of that here, but it just continues across.
Art-wise, I really wanted to go somewhere different after the first world. Like I was almost doing the reddy brown loading bay to just kind of get that out of the system, and so the follow-up for that was the greens and the white medical bay theme.
It looks beautiful, and it's kind of intense as well. I actually like this level for a similar reason to I like Turbine, because players already think, oh, they can't possibly throw more enemies at me, and then we throw, like 100 wasps on the screen at once and just really freak people out.
So this is Influx, aka the level from the trailer that everyone remembers. Probably one of the most visually eye-catching moments in the game, I think.
In some ways I regret that it's so deep in the game. As I've learned later in my life, people have very, very short attention spans, myself included. And this is already midway through World 2. But when people get here, they're genuinely like wowed a lot of the time, which is really lovely.
Especially like when the level transition happens and the blocks fall away and fall into place, and it just feels awesome when it happens, and it's really exciting.
Surprisingly, this was one of the first things I ever worked on from the programming perspective at Cactus, and it just actually worked. It played well, and that shocked me because I don't know how to do any of that stuff. It's very, very simple in the back end as well. It just maps a pixel grid to every block, and I can paint new versions of the level and kind of get it up and running very quickly, and that's why I was able to make all these interesting patterns and make them work so fast.
It's an interesting example of generating chaos and complexity out of a small number of parts. A lot of the look is based on animations being offset, so you get this beautiful ripple effect when the levels transform.
Oh yeah, I remember when you came up with that idea, because I had them all just transforming sort of instantly or at a set rate, and then you worked out that it would be cool to transform them based on the distance to the player and then use that in 4-player as well. So it's always kind of relative to where the characters are and will always ripple out from their position.
It's practical as well because it means that the ground always changes first under the player, so they're less likely to run into a transforming block.
Yeah, there's a lot of tricks like that in the game where you think something's really dangerous, but it's oftentimes we're pretty lenient.
So this is Oxygen. I actually really like this level. It's very simple. It's basically a donut, but there's a bunch of interesting dynamics you get out of it, and I liked what I was able to do with the lighting. Again, it's another level where there's a kind of story progression through from evening to morning.
Yeah, I remember when we learned that lesson actually. Before we worked on Cactus, we were working on little jam games and things, and one piece of feedback we always got with anything arcadey was that the sense of progression would feel lacking if there wasn't a visual element. You could push through and have harder enemies and more crazy things going on, but something like the aesthetic changing between different color grades of blue and red and green always gave people a much stronger feeling about the fact that something has changed, like they moved forward in the progress towards completion. I think this level works really well because of it, not in spite of its complexity, but kind of together with its lack of complexity.
A huge inspiration actually came from the old Brisbane airport. They had this kind of circular terminal with trees and stuff inside it, where you could see it from as you walked around it. And so it was like, it was something I drew on when I was trying to figure out how to visually depict this level.
I think this is one of the few levels in the game where I didn't go back and rebalance the bomb-only wave that you are so obsessed with in your level tuning.
Oh, and the number of times that's taken me out, I tell you.
Oh, yeah.
People got to dodge.
I make no apologies. It was fun.
I find this level a lot of fun to play. The way the tracks, the moving tracks on the ground, mess with your movement is fun and frustrating at the same time.
I always get amused when people play this level and they completely miss what it was inspired by. It was a very direct inspiration for me when I was designing it. We were playing a lot of Bomberman. And yeah, it's just, I think it's great. I like this level.
So the other visual inspiration, again, like the previous level, was airports, including the little flashing hazard lights at the top. Yeah.
It also is one of the craziest levels for bullet patterns yet. You get bullet hell with Embryo, but this is the first level where we dump multiple turrets plus a bunch of drones simultaneously, and it gets pretty crazy. I always appreciated that about it as well.
I really like the bits where the kegs start crawling out of the holes, because you often get like 4 kegs crawling out of a very small hole, and it really looks like they're just pouring out of somewhere.
What about the bits where the platforms start popping up and down, and you're trying to shoot your long-range weapons like a missile or a cannonball, and you get the perfect shot lined up, and it's going to get you that full chain, get you that S+ ranking, and the platform pops up and blocks your shot. Do you love those moments? Because I can tell you from my experience on the internet, not everybody loves those moments. But yeah, I think by and large this is one of the more interesting levels in World 2.
Bloody, what do you call it? Toaster dogs. The bane of my existence.
Oh, they're great.
You need your toast.
They've toasted me a few times.
The rockets can be very difficult to see amidst the chaos at some points in this level, it's true. Especially towards the end when everything's moving so quickly. But it does kind of work, and I think the chaos adds to its charm.
Vespula, voiced by my wife, Angela, actually. And I thought she did a really good job. This level, you know, you watch people play it and they struggle against it. And they think, wow, this is so much harder than Embryo. Just watching people try to deal with the waves of wasps, it's amazing, you know, that it gets even harder than this.
I really like the fact that people are just never sure that what the game is going to throw at them. And I think this boss does a perfect job of that. You're saying, yeah, she's super hard compared to Embryo, and that's kind of wonderful. You think the game is going to be all bullet hell and it's going to be kind of Embryo-like, and you just have to learn the patterns, and then you have this, and it's, oh, there's 100 wasps on screen and they're circling around and they're moving out to get you. And also, yeah, Ange does a fantastic job with the voice. She's appropriately kind of menacing, but not evil, and just really, really good.
It has that kind of melodramatic announcement to things as well. She did a really good job. I think I'm still most proud of the way Vespula turns into a ball. That was a idea I had, and I had no idea if it was going to work. but I was too scared to tell anyone how unconfident I was until I modeled it. Yeah, it ended up working really nicely.
It works super well, except when people try and shoot the ball.
Yeah.
The behavior of the wasps is sort of mesmerizing in a way.
Oh, I love it. It's like a fluid dynamic.
Yeah.
You get enough enemies on the screen, and they just move like a pattern.
Interestingly enough, in our speedrunning community, they regard Vespula as the hardest boss because there's the most chance for things to go wrong, which I think is really great, that this early boss can cause the best players in the world so much pain just because of the nature of her style of chaotic attack. She's not the hardest boss to defeat, but she is the hardest to consistently perfect. And that's kind of unique. She also has some really great dialogue. I like Vespula's dialogue. I like the boss dialogue in general. We don't talk about that enough, that each of the bosses has like a really strong connection to the different androids and gets their own point across depending on who you're playing.
I kind of like the idea that like Embryo is a bit of a bully and you kind of feel alright about taking him down, but Vespula's got a hint of tragic to her. Like you're supposed to kind of be like, oh, you don't feel super great about how things came out.
Mm. Well, also there's a backstory between Vespula and is it Lemon? I think? Yeah, and so like there were times when they were buddies.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's,
Vespula was her mentor. So
yeah,
it's like
yeah. So there's this in the dialogue you can see a bit of that in there.